Good evening. I'm usually saying happy Monday, but this is Thursday. We are here with an exclusive conversation. This is your host of Reality Trek, Christal Jordan, and it is Thursday. So it is not happy Monday. It is Thursday, but I am so excited. I feel honored to have this conversation. We are going to be honoring DMX in a conversation with Craig Broadhead, who is a part of, has been a part of his management team for years. And like I said, I'm just really excited to do this. I had been feeling like I wanted to do something to speak to just the icon that he was, and how much DMX touched us all here at Rolling Out and across the world. And so I'm very, very thankful to have Craig with us today. So please help me welcome Craig Broadhead. Hey, Craig.
How are you? How's everything, Christal? I appreciate you having us here.
Oh no, I appreciate you being willing to do this. Like I said, we really obviously, this is the circumstances are less than fortunate, but I appreciate you being willing to come and talk and just to help us celebrate, the icon and the legend, but also the man, Earl
Right.
Simmons. I think people get really caught up in celebrity personas and their success, and then they tend to be difficult on them with their personal lives. But we're all people,
Right.
all
Right.
people.
And
So
that's the
first of
best
all,
thing.
yeah, how are you doing with everything? How have you been over the last couple of weeks?
It's been emotional roller coaster. It goes without saying. I would say each day I probably go through about three different stages. I would say normally either still disbelief
Yeah.
that this has happened, and then I would say the second stage is like, wow, he's gone, and then the third stage is the one that I try to stay in, which is, he's gone, but he's living within me and living within
Hmm.
us.
Hmm.
And that we have to carry out the mission and the journey that we had planned, especially with regards to his kids. So it's been tough, but probably haven't been able to grieve
Hmm.
properly because my focus is on on his kids,
Yeah.
and so I had to get right back to work, and he just completed an album, so
Hmm.
that's what it is. I'm still coping with it, deal with it. Can't believe it. It's a terrible pain, because he was
Yeah.
a great man and friend. Um,
Tell us.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I can imagine. Um, just tell us about your friend. Tell us about the man, because like I said, I think we saw him when there were headlines, or when there was an album, but that doesn't really speak to what happened, those gaps in between, and how his life was, and what your relationship was like just with him as a man. So tell us about your friend.
I've known X for about 30 years now because I was the A&R and executive producer at Rough Riders, and then I
Okay.
left in 2006, and we stayed in touch. But it wasn't until about 3 years ago that he reached back out to as far as us working together again. And he
Hmm.
wanted me to come back to executive produce his new album, anticipating being back on Def Jam Universal. Um, and I can tell you this, from back then when he started his career
Hmm.
up until now, the last, I would say, 2 years of his life, he was a different man in
Hmm.
this sense. He was doing a lot of introspection, and he was growing tired of the industry,
Yeah.
and he knew what he had to do, as far as make another album and do his shows and touring,
Hmm.
but he was squarely focused on becoming a better man, becoming a better father, and his children. His focus was his children. I mean,
Hmm.
at one point he said, like, I was like, X, so what do you really want to do? He said, we're going to do this album, but really? We're going to do this album, but I would just love to be sitting on a porch in a rocking chair with my
Yeah.
kids around me. Like,
Yeah.
that's the stage of life he was at because
Yeah.
he's been through so much in his life,
Yeah.
you know, the hurt, the pain that he was open with to the public, and to his fans. He didn't hide anything.
Yeah.
We lived his life with him. And I think that's why people love him so much
Hmm.
because he didn't put on that face and those airs. Um, but he was tired, and he's a fighter and he's constantly fighting these battles. And, for him, it was one day at a time. And I don't think people understand that. You know, like, of course, people just love to talk about the salacious stuff. They like to talk about, you know, baby mothers. They like to talk about drugs, but they don't understand that this man also was dealing with whether it's mental health issues, you know, anxiety, depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was a lot of pressure on him. Everybody was looking to him. Everybody had their hand out, you know. And so, if you ask me about the man, though, he had the biggest heart, the
Mm-hmm.
biggest heart, constantly giving more than he got.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you a story. We just left Atlanta before All Star Weekend, and one night it was real cold, and we're walking out of the Metro Diner. It's about 3 in the morning, and he bought hotel rooms for like 4 homeless people that
Wow.
were outside the diner. Like that's the type of things that go. He doesn't tell everybody. He's not on Facebook and Instagram. Look at me, and you know, it's just stuff he did on the daily, handing out
Yeah.
money every time we came to us. Anytime we're in a car and we come to a red light in any major city, and of
Mm-hmm.
course you have the people there that are on the side. Every reach right in his pocket
Yeah.
every time. You know, and God bless you. Always gave him a good word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there wasn't. Can you tell? There wasn't one time that there wasn't one time or one day that we went out in public where
Mm-hmm.
at least one person didn't come to him and say, "Your music changed my life. Your music saved my life." You
Yeah.
know, I mean, all age groups, all demographics, ethnicities, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we had one young mother. She was probably about 24 years old, and she said, "My daughter has a mother because of your music. I was suicidal, and your music changed my life." So I
Wow.
think the main thing is people. He was so giving.
Mm-hmm.
He talked with everyone. I never heard him say no to a photograph. He took pictures with everybody, even
Yeah.
if it took us forever to go from 10 feet. He never, because he said, I have to give that back to my fans,
Yeah.
you know?
I appreciate you sharing those stories, because I think those are the things that we want to, remember him by. I think when I think of him, I think of someone that, just was just gifted and blessed, but also had a very painful past that he was struggling with as he was growing, right? So I wonder, do you feel like I mean, he shared everything with his fans, which I think is extremely brave, but it also allows people to make judgments and involve themselves in your business. But do you think that he had healed from some of the pain that he endured as a young child? We've heard he shared his story a few times
Mm-hmm.
on television and in different forums. But do you think that before he passed, he had gotten to a peaceful place where he had made peace with his beginning and his mother and his childhood and how things were hurtful back then?
Let me tell you how great of a man he was, just as a human being. I think that he came to peace with his mother and with his father and with those who had harmed him because he was a forgiving soul.
Yeah.
The last few years, whenever he would do interviews, people always wanted to go there because, of
Hmm.
course, they read the book. He
Yeah.
was, you know, and then they want to go right to his mother. And he refused over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm not opening that door. We had a conversation. We've reconciled. I forgive her.
Hmm.
She gave me her explanation. We spoke. We hugged. We cried. And he said, so that's behind me. I'm not going to keep dragging her through that.
Hmm.
Over the last year, we visited his father,
Hmm.
and same thing. So I would say that what he did is he forgave those who harmed him,
Hmm.
but he himself didn't really deal with the trauma and effect it had on him. So he bore the pain, and
Yeah.
like that's why his words are so powerful. Because if you
Yeah.
really think about it, for whatever they want to say about him, he never harmed anybody except
No.
himself.
Right. You never heard. He doesn't have any of the stories that other people have
Right.
about him. I want to ask you about music, because I was thinking, I mentioned a couple times, I've mentioned him in a few interviews since he passed. And
Right.
I'm so happy that we had a chance to honor him and celebrate him when the pandemic first started with Verzuz, with Swiss Beats and Timberland and him and Snoop together. That was a beautiful thing. But I was thinking, like, his music, he's like timeless. Like, many artists have to change their style and
Right.
their music no longer translates because it doesn't fit the culture.
Right.
What was his music, because he was so passionate, he was so honest, it seems like it would always, no matter when he plays it, it always would connect. What was it like working on new music though? Was he looking to do something different, or was he staying tried and true to who he always was musically?
This album is classic. When I tell you classic, it's
Yeah.
classic. And no, we're not chasing the trends. When we came into the game, if people remember in '98, everybody was partying, popping Cristal
Yeah.
on yachts, Coogee this, Versace that. And he came
Right.
in just with a wife beater or a white tee, jeans,
So,
and boots.
yeah.
Everybody can relate to that.
Yeah.
And so that was all he never cared about what was happening out there. He's like, those who hear me will hear me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so his authenticity for me is what goes through.
Yeah.
There's a lot of artists that are hot lyricists. You know, they make sure that the rhymes are crazy, the wordplay is crazy. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing about him is you believe him.
Yeah.
No matter what he says, no matter what the song is about, you literally feel him to
Mm-hmm.
your core. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's no reason for him to follow trends because he sets
Yeah.
trends. You
Yeah.
know, we got like right now on this album, we have a song with Pop Smoke. You know, DMX featuring Pop Smoke. We got DMX featuring Griselda Boys. It's DMX. He's gonna be him. You know,
Yeah.
we have a record DMX and Bono. He's not changing up because he's on a record with Bono from U2. It's
Yeah.
DMX you get.
I can't
And
imagine him changing. I can't
he
imagine
is.
him fitting into any other space. It's like
Right.
his presence was so big. If you guys
Right.
are just tuning in, this of course is your host Christal Jordan. This is Reality Check, but this is exclusive with Craig Broadhead, who is a part of DMX's management team, his personal management team, and most importantly, a friend for over 30 years. And we are just honoring the man, Earl Simmons, and of course the legend that was DMX. We're talking about new music, and so I didn't know that he had been in the studio like that. Talk about this process. Just how was he in the studio? Was he excited? Where were you guys working at?
Well, here's what happened. COVID was announced. And so we looked at each other, and also with Jungle, who's his road manager, Maurice Jones is his road manager. So it was the three of us, like three the hard way. And we were like, yo, there's no way we're getting stuck in New York. They talking about shutting down airports and everything. So we rented an RV,
Mm-hmm.
and the three of us jumped in the RV on March 20th of last year and drove all the way to Nashville, Tennessee. He just decided, you know what? I want, because every time we did an album with him back in the day, it was always a new city, new
Okay.
experiences, new thoughts, new creativity, new city. So
Mm-hmm.
he decided out of the blue, I want to go to Nashville. So we jumped in the RV. We went to Nashville. We spent 4 months in Nashville during COVID, out on the farm on the outskirts of Nashville, And so there we got busy writing and getting in the studio, getting the flow back. But the reality is he wanted to do new music because he knew it was time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you, the man was more about finding himself in his own spiritual, mental, emotional well-being. He was
Mm-hmm.
really invested in that. There was a lot of talking about his childhood. A lot of us, on the back porch,
Mm-hmm.
just talking, going through things, sharing experiences, each of us, But in the meantime and in between time, we wrote songs and recorded them. And so
Nice.
we were in Nashville for 4 months. And then from Nashville, we went and did Verzuz,
Mm-hmm.
July 22nd.
How was
That
that
big seven.
experience? Because he seemed, first of all, he was hilarious.
Right, right. Yeah, that right
Hilarious.
there, what you just said, is what fans, I think this past year, just through Instagram and different videos, are getting a little glimpse of how funny he is. Because I always think,
Yeah.
yeah, he's hard, he's gangster. He
Yeah.
is the funniest. He have us rolling. You know how some people you see him around and the people around them are laughing, but you can tell it's a fake laugh, just
Yes.
laughing because of who they are.
Yes.
Him, you're laughing because the man is funny.
Yeah.
He started having more fun. He started showing different sides of him. You see a lot of videos with him dancing because he loves old school R&B. And
Nice.
so you see a lot of him dancing. Like he was really enjoying this last year, while at the same time going through, and
Yeah.
trying to sort through the trauma and the issues that he was dealing with.
Yeah.
Um, but we went to Versus, and I think that's when he really realized, like, the love he had. He started to feel it and see it.
I'm
You
so
know,
glad.
the way
I'm so
Snoop, the
glad
way
he had that. Yeah, I'm so
it
glad
was
he had that
beautiful.
experience
It
because
was
I
beautiful.
mean, it was a people really showed up. Snoop and him, the camaraderie was
Right,
beautiful. Even watched interviews with Swiss Beats, and he talked about their friendship and how
right,
they had a real honest. It's like he get in the car and just drive and talk.
right,
He's not a
right,
person that wants to do all the industry stuff. It's just we're
right,
real friends. Just get in the car and talk and
right,
drive.
right.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing, since you're talking about verses, that came to my head, like just his, I don't know if people caught it. It's just a slick humor. So he was like, when it came time to do what these bitches want, he
Hmm.
was like, usually I rip my shirt off on this, but you know, I got a little situation here. And he started patting his stomach. And then Snoop was like, yo, listen, if we get up to X amount of whatever views, I'm gonna take my shirt off. DMX is gonna take his shirt off, and I'm gonna take my shirt off. And on cue, X said, man, we look like an MF and 10 up in here. Like we were rolling, like he's just quick with it. He said we like a 10 because Snoop is like this, and he's like, I said, yo,
Yeah.
this guy is crazy, you
Yeah.
know. But no, that was a great night. They had a lot of fun, and that really helped his spirit.
Good. That's
That
good.
really helped his spirit a lot. And then we stayed in LA, and we recorded the rest of the album at a Snoop's studio. And
Nice.
that's where we did the songs with Usher, with Alicia Keys, um, Lil Wayne. Then we went to Atlanta to do a record with the Griselda boys, Benny the Butcher and
Nice.
Conway and Westside. But that's when, and as people were relating to him, you could see he was like, yo, they f with me, like, yo, like he didn't real like we did a show in Cincinnati in Ohio,
Hmm.
and Dave Chappelle reached out to through Talib Kweli and was like, listen, I want you to bring X up. So we went to his house, and X is there. He's cooking crab legs. He's like, I gotta cook for you, and he cooked his specialty crab legs and spaghetti. And Dave Chappelle was telling him like, yo, do you realize what you mean to us? From one icon to, like, I'm an icon. I get that. I'm telling you, you are an icon. You are like here. Like, do you
Yeah.
understand what you mean to the culture
Yeah.
outside of music, just in general? And you could see it was like X was. You could tell it was feeding his soul.
Yeah.
Last 2 months ago, in before All Star Weekend, we run into Jamie Foxx.
Hmm.
Same thing. Jamie just saying, "Listen, brother, we always rooting for you, and I've been watching you the last year and a half, and I'm so proud of you. Like I see you putting on weight and
Yeah.
looking good." And X was like, "Oh, that's what you call it? Fat is good." Like he's always quick with, but like, the stomach is good. This is healthy. All right, that's what you call it. Like he always, always had a joke, but you could tell it did his soul good. And then
Yeah.
right before we left Atlanta, we went and spent time at T.I. and Tiny's house.
Hmm.
And same thing, you could just see the love was genuine, and it
Yeah.
really did his soul good. It really did his soul good. So that's what just makes this hurt even more.
Yeah.
Is like he was getting to a place where he realized even, he had his fans and he loves his fans, but when you see
Mhm.
like your peers, people in the industry, would
Yeah.
like to get their admiration and the accolades from them, like it also touched him in a special way, a special way.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that he had that experience. It would be even more heartbreaking if you guys hadn't had that,
Right,
right
right,
now. I want to ask you to kind of go another place. I think that I know that you know, after COVID in the last couple years, we've been talking about. I mean, consistently we've been talking about mental health issues with
right,
African Americans, specifically Black men.
right,
And I don't think people really give DMX his credit and really being honest about issues. If you listen, I mentioned Slippin' was my favorite record, and that's because
right,
an ex of mine played that record, and this is a guy, and
mhm,
I was like a 20-something-year-old girl, and I could connect to that record. It
right,
just people dealing with issues and pain, and wherever
right,
you're going through, it doesn't matter your race, culture, age, his words, and that
right.
honesty with connects. So I wonder if you feel like he really understood that he really was one of the first people that talked about mental health and just depression, feeling like feeling suicidal, feeling all that early on in a really honest way that we don't often see Black men do.
Right.
Do you
He
feel he
did.
was aware of that?
I think he was aware of it on some level. Like he said to me at one point, he was like, "Craig, I've been on this earth way longer than I thought I would be."
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that let me know he was tired, you know. But but we openly spoke about, like I said, his main thing was his fatherhood show. We were in development stages with a production company of a fatherhood show where we were. It was basically a reality TV with him bringing all of his children together, and
Mm-hmm.
many of them meeting one another for the very first time,
Wow,
and
really?
and becoming a better father, establishing stronger bonds and ties with them, and
Mm-hmm.
letting them know they had family outside of him, that
Right.
together they were a family. And that was his main priority. But with that show, the main issue we were going to raise for our community outside of fatherhood was also mental health issues, and how it was okay. Like, we were going to make sure that on staff we had clinicians, from psychologists to psychiatrists to family counselors,
Mm-hmm.
like, to deal with issues, maybe, whether it's with his children, himself, to give advice,
Yeah.
counseling, therapy along the journey. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's actually something that we wanted to openly talk about on the show,
Yeah,
and to bring to the forefront in our community, because it is taboo.
it
But
is.
if you love slipping, once again, we have a song on this album called "Letter to My Son," and it's
Mm.
him speaking to his son, um, and about the issues that they have had, that
Yeah.
were publicized in the past. And when you see that, I mean, it's a touching record, but it's once again him that we all can relate to on some level. We
Mm-hmm.
all have had. None of our families are perfect.
No,
You
no,
know,
no. And it's
most
and
children think
yeah,
that mom or dad made a mistake doing this, or made it, or should have done this, or I wish they would have spent more. Like everybody.
yeah,
And so I'm telling you, when you hear this record, when we played it in the studio, grown men, so-called gangsters,
yeah.
crying just listening to this record.
I believe
You
it. I
know,
think we had grown men crying a lot.
right,
I
right,
listen to it a lot. If you guys
right,
again are joining us, we are honoring the legend DMX, and we are celebrating the man Earl Simmons here with Craig Broadhead, who was a personal friend and part of DMX's management team for the last 3 years. Mentioned his son, and we know that he did. Well, his oldest son, I believe, they talked about their issues publicly a few years ago. Um, can you tell us where? I remember there was a scene when he did Iyanla Van Zant Fix My Life, where he saw his son, and I started crying watching it because he saw him. He started crying. His son was crying.
right,
Though you can't fake that, it
right,
doesn't. It's just a father that loves his son, and as a parent, we all make mistakes. Every parent makes mistakes. Like you said, there's
right.
no handbook for that, especially when you're dealing with your own pain. Can you tell us about where he was in the process of kind of um, reuniting with his children, or rebuilding those relationships with his children?
I'm not going to give that away because we actually have a documentary too that's going to be on HBO, and that
Okay.
is actually covered in that.
Okay.
He with his older son, X and Earl and his older son. What I can tell you is that it's it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you is that what bothered him about that show was less his son and more he felt that it was manipulated.
Yeah.
He felt that producers are like, say this, say this,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
whispering in his ears, forcing his son to do something that he didn't feel he would naturally do.
Right.
And that's what hurt him so bad. That's why you saw him react the way he did. And it's also because of one of the core principles that he lived his life with, which is that the one condition of love is there's no condition of love.
Yeah.
You know, the one condition of love is unconditional love.
There's no condition. Yeah.
Right. And so he
Yeah.
said, if you're setting conditions, either you love me or you don't, because
Yeah.
I'm going to love you whether you murder somebody, whether you on drugs, whether it doesn't matter what you do. My love for you is unconditional because you're my
Right.
son. And
Right.
so what hurt him so much is if you're setting conditions, well, no, we can't have a relationship if you're on drugs, and we can't. That's
Yeah.
what hurt him,
Yeah.
because he lives by that principle, and it's also, something that, like, where he continuously just allowed people in his life, even on the business side,
Yeah. that he
who
would not take.
constantly hurt him, but he had such a
Yeah,
big heart. He'd give him second chances, third chances, fourth chances,
yeah,
and now you see a lot of those same people all over the internet trying to get 15 minutes of fame,
yeah,
and they haven't been around him. And now, and I'm never going to, the love is real, the love is genuine, but the way to go about it is when he was alive and you're not, the
yeah,
last few years, you're not, but now all of
yeah,
a sudden you're making statements which are harmful to the kids. People don't realize when they were putting out those during that week where he was fighting for his life, and they're putting out all these different misleading
yeah. I was going
statements.
to ask you about that. How did you guys deal with that? And can you? And I think somebody close to him that experienced that has to say something because that has to stop. The irresponsible.
Right,
It's not journalism. I don't know what that is. Social media. People that
right,
is. I can't even imagine that being my friend and seeing days of it's like a 48
right,
hour period of lies.
right.
How
I
were you
wasn't
all?
even, me personally, we were at the hospital every day, so it was like we weren't paying attention to that. But how I got to find out about it is because remember now when the one statement was made saying, oh, he woke up and he's off the ventilator and he's alert, I had
Mm-hmm.
his kids calling, excited. His kids live in different parts of the country. This is before we brought everybody in,
Yeah.
at the middle to the end of the week.
Wow.
Kids calling, say, oh, daddy's doing better. And I have to
Okay. Yeah.
tell them, no, the condition hasn't changed. He's still in critical condition in ICU, and he's on life support. You know how that feels having to tell is
Yeah.
forget the adults, whatever. We understand social media, whatever. But like
Mm-hmm.
people are so irresponsible, they don't understand that he has children.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's a life.
ranging from
Yeah.
1 years old all the way up to 28. Like he has children.
So
You
there's
know,
15.
and
There's 15 children, right?
there's 14 children, and his 15 is his goddaughter, who
Okay.
he's raised like a daughter, and she calls him dad. And yes,
Okay. Um, that's whole. I don't even know. Like I can't. I hope that this situation. There's been so many more causes that to stop, and
right,
people are able to keep things private.
right.
How did he feel about everything that we've been going through racially for African Americans and the police brutality and everything that we saw magnified in 2020 as you guys were in Nashville? I'm sure you guys had conversations about George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, all the different, the Sandra, all the many different issues and just racial issues that we continue to go through. Did you guys have conversations about that?
We had conversations about that, and his main point was he's like, this has been going on forever. And he
Yeah.
said they didn't believe us. Like when we would say it, they
Hmm.
didn't believe us. They're like, they're making this up. He said now we even have video proof, and they still saying they putting the blame. Oh, well, he must have did something wrong. They're
Yeah.
making us. The victim is the perpetrator still. So that would be
Hmm.
more his line of thinking regarding. He was like, yo, you can't believe this. Can you see this? They're
Yeah.
looking at it's right on video. It's caught, and they're still not being convicted.
Right.
But he was someone who, when it was close to him, would speak out on issues like
Hmm.
personally, but he never was really like, as you know, on social media talking about issues. Um, and he never would be reactionary. He didn't want to go because there were people saying, yo, you should make a song about it. And he was
Yeah.
like,
Funny.
he was never reactionary. He didn't
Yeah.
follow what was going on. He did what he was inspired to do.
Hmm.
So the best way to explain that is like, as we know, he also has often talked about becoming a minister or what have you.
Hmm.
But the struggle was he was trying to figure out what that ministry would look like because he wants to represent God. But here's the difference. He's like, I don't know how ministers have to preach every Sunday. What if you're not inspired? He said, so at what point is it fake? At what point does it just come tradition and norm and you're just doing it to do it? For him,
Hmm.
everything had to be meaningful.
Yeah.
Every
Had to be
rhyme
authentic.
he wrote down. He doesn't freestyle.
Wow.
Every rhyme, he said, this is a gift and a talent I have from God that he gave me. So
Hmm.
I have to show that I honor that and value it by at least I can do is write it down, not just
Yeah.
come off the top of my head and make sure that last words rhyme. He's like,
Yeah.
that's not thought. It's not meaningful. And so it was the same thing with that. He was trying to figure out, what is my ministry going to be? I know God is calling me to do something,
Hmm.
but what is it going to look like? Because what if I'm inspired on Tuesday and I need to give him a word Tuesday at 3 a.m.?
I
like that.
love,
He was eclectic like that. Like he was just. It's when the spirit moves. I should be able to.
yeah,
I'm not into this building, and every Sunday.
yeah, yeah. I
What if
think
I'm not inspired?
don't you think that he was his music was a ministry because he talked about his prayers, prayers that the many prayers that he delivered over the years through different
Right.
interviews and even
Right.
praying before Verzuz. He definitely had a calling, and God was definitely it's undeniable that God was
Right.
on him.
Right.
How did people around him? Because
Right.
watching him pray and hearing his words was moving. So, what was
Right.
it like being around him when he was in that space?
It was so powerful because you could feel it. You could feel God's presence. And I think the biggest thing we learned from him, and if his life means anything, it's that you you don't have to wait to be perfect to speak on God's behalf.
I love that.
Like none of us are perfect anyway. But
Mm-hmm.
you have people, church people, who want to act perfect, make you think they're perfect, and look down their nose at people who are having issues or flaws or open to the public, while
Right,
they have same flaws, but they might just hide it better, you
right,
know. And so I think that's the biggest message from him would be that don't wait till you're perfect.
yeah.
Like God can use you. God can use you in the
Mm-hmm.
state in the condition you are right now.
What's your favorite experience on the road? There are so many shows of him just being on stage by himself, not a huge entourage,
Right.
and his presence was it's magical to watch and just very different than most artists that, especially hip hop. Usually, hip hop artists don't sound the same.
Right.
Every time I saw him, he sounded exactly like X every single time.
Right.
So what's your favorite experience on the road with him at a show?
I would say it didn't matter what it was. Every show he gave his all, right? So
Hmm.
I wouldn't even say it was at a show. I would say my biggest experience on the road with him, and this speaks to the man again, that people are missing. A lot of people are missing.
Hmm.
So we're in Atlantic City, and we're walking the boardwalk in Atlantic City. And we can't even go 5 feet without, can I take a picture? Can I take a picture?
Yeah.
So there's one, I would say she was in her probably mid 60s, with a European accent, comes up and says, "Oh, DMX, can I please take a picture?" Yeah, no problem. Come on. Takes a
Hmm.
picture. She walks away happy. We think it's fine. Other people take about 15, 20, 30 seconds later, the same woman comes back bawling, tears running down. I mean, hysterical. And she
Hmm.
has her phone, FaceTime. And she's like, "Please, I don't mean to bother you guys. I don't mean to bother you, but can I please talk to you?" And he's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" And she said, "I have a son who's mentally challenged, and he's been unresponsive for about 2 weeks." She said, "We dress him, we bathe him, we dress him, we sit him in his chair, and we're talking. He's not responding to us. He's just sitting there." She said, "I just called him, and I told him, guess who I just met? I met DMX." And she turned the phone to him, and you can see the young man there. He was about 21, and he's like, and he just bust down in tears, and he just said, "God, why? How have you given me this effect?" Like that's my most favorite memory. Like
Wow.
people, it's not his performances, it's not those are great, but it's how
Yeah.
he touched people.
Yeah.
Like this woman, and he sat there and grabbed her and hugged her, prayed with the young man on the phone and the
Hmm.
mother, and cried for about 10 minutes.
Wow.
Like those. That's the things people don't see.
Yeah.
You know, because they're too busy focusing on flaws he may or may not have had. You
Yeah.
know,
Or just him being a celebrity in the music. You know what I mean? Because his music was it was spiritual in
right,
a way that was very different. But there's
right,
some people just excited about the being around a celebrity and not kind of getting what the message is behind that.
right.
Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. But it feels like even though a lot of us listening and people chiming in don't know him personally like you do. It makes sense because that's how you felt listening. That's how we all felt listening to
Right, right.
listening to him.
And that
So
connection is real.
yeah. So I have to ask because we just have to. Can you share with us, or do you know even what happened? Like how did he end up? Did he have a heart attack, or what happened that caused him to be gone so quickly, just out of the blue like that?
We had been home we had been home. We came back home the Sunday of All-Star Weekend. And so usually when we come home, because we've been on the road the better part of a year, we go our separate ways. So I go upstate, he goes with his family. And so he had been enjoying a lot of time with family, friends, staying locally in Westchester. And I just got a call. And all I know is that he had a major heart attack and dropped to the floor. And 911 was called. And he actually didn't have a pulse. They revived him, and he never woke up from then. So that's what I know. I know everybody's trying to interject. I know. So here's the thing I know. He had a massive heart attack, one. Two, when we got to the ER that night, they ran a battery of tests, and it came back that he was positive for COVID. I then asked questions because I hadn't seen him for a few weeks because we were on break. And they said that he was out a couple of weeks before that, and that they had a couples night. And a couple of nights later, one of the couples called and said, "Hey, so and so tested positive for COVID. You might want to get checked." A few days later, I know his fiance lost her taste. They had mild symptoms. And he was just like very, very achy and was in bed a lot. But then started feeling better after 4 or 5 days. And that is all we know for sure, is that that night he suffered a massive heart attack, and that he did test positive for COVID, and that he never woke up since then. You know, he was fighting for his life.
Well, I appreciate again you taking the time to talk with us and to share some of those personal stories. I guess ask you one last question. What do you think the biggest misconception about Earl Simmons is?
The biggest misconception? Well, the biggest misconception is all his people. He had his battle with drugs, but that's all people want to talk about. The man was so much more than that. You know, he was so much more than that. So I guess that's the thing I would point to, is that he was a man of God. You know, that he fought as hard as he could, as often as he could, and it was a daily battle to fight against the different traumas and what we like to call demons, what have you. And at the end of the day, through it all, through all the people that scarred him and hurt him, all he did was bless everyone else. Whether it was through his music, through his words, through his prayers, through his actions. Tell me how many people he hurt.
Even acting, I meant to ask you that earlier. Did he ever want to do that again? Because he was so amazing, like on the screen. You know, the movies that he was in were automatically hits, and he was. I mean, his presence, whether on stage or on film, he was the real deal. He was a star. Did he ever talk about wanting to do that again, or was that just because it seemed like it was effortless for him? I don't know if he knew how amazing he was, or if he just thought that was natural because it was very natural to him.
We actually did a few. He did small parts in movies where we would do like 2 or 3 days on set. He was actually getting ready. He was just started a role for one of a good friend of ours that's like family from the Rough Rider days, called Dogman by Antonio Simmons. We literally just filmed 2 days with him down in Atlanta before we came back. And that's the direction we were going in, because quite honestly, he had grown tired of the music industry and just didn't want any parts of it. So he did music almost like because he had to, you know, but wanted to transition into not only move TV and film, but we were talking about building the brand as far as production companies, film companies, you know, Bloodline Productions, Bloodline Films. So that way, no longer would he be acting in movies, but anything he was in, that it would be joint ventures with Bloodline Films. Starting with the reality show, that was a joint venture with Bloodline Films. We had different concepts that I won't say for other movies that we're still gonna blaze forward in his honor, you know, to make sure that his children are well taken care of. So that's the direction we were going into. Him being, you know, we were trying to tell him that we got to get you to the point where you're making money while you're sleeping by using your brand, that you put in the work. You've built your brand. Now we just have to cultivate it, you know, and start, you know, so he can be on that porch in his rocking
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Were there any artists that he really had a lot of respect for? Like I said, Swiss Beats talks about his relationship. Anyone else that he really deeply loved and respected, and they had a great relationship that you can share?
Let me see. Who would I say would be the most? Oh, I can tell you this. The one he wanted to meet the most and do a record with the most was Sade.
Oh man,
He,
that
he,
was
he always wanted to do a record with Sade.
yeah,
And, he always wanted to do a record with Sade.
nice. Yeah.
Besides that, I think what people know, he loved and respected Hove, Jay-Z,
Hmm.
Nas, the people in his circle, the people
Yeah.
he came in with, you know.
Yeah. Now
People
there was
like to
a
pit them
rumor
against one another, but he saw
they
it as
did.
but he saw it
Yeah.
more as like when he says adversary, he just meant like in a good way, like, yeah, that's how it's going to bring the best out in me,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I have
Well, they had
someone
a
to
lot
go
of
up against.
respect. They might have went back and forth, but there was a lot of respect there. There
Right.
was a rumor that Jay-Z and Beyonce bought his masters and gave another one of those social media
Yeah.
rumors. That's not true.
Not true. No.
Not true. But yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. But thank you so much, Craig, for
Thank you
sharing a
so much, Crystal.
friend with
I
us.
appreciate you.
Please come back and share.
Definitely.
You guys get ready to do this reality series and documentary. Please come back so we can help you support what you guys are doing and get the message about that out. Please promise me that you will come back
I
and
promise
share.
you. I
I,
promise you. You hit up Tara. She knows.
I will definitely. Tara knows. I'll definitely hit her. Be like, I
Tara's it.
can't
That's
take.
the
He said
point
he's gonna
person.
do that.
Thank you very much. And we really appreciate the love too that's outpoured towards him while he was in the hospital and now his family. Like, we really appreciate that because all the love he's given to people throughout the years, it was a blessing to feel it and see it, even in the various vigils that are going on, seeing it
Yeah.
being returned to him. And I know he's smiling if he
Yeah.
sees that. So we appreciate that too from the fans.
Absolutely. They're RIP and so many people saying things in the comments. So we'll definitely get this out and we'll look forward to seeing the next part of this when you guys get get everything settled, welcoming you back with more news about it. But thank you so much for taking time out, Craig.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right, you have a good one.
You too.
All right. Well, thank you all for hanging out. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. Just some great stories that we've never heard before. But for some reason, to me, the stories felt so just natural because I felt like that was the energy that you got when you listened to his music and when you were around him. I had the opportunity to meet him once. I was actually supposed to interview him last year and didn't get a chance to when he was here, but I did get a chance to meet him. And I'm just so thankful that we had this opportunity to just share some good light on his life and to talk about some of the positive things behind that. I hope you guys really took that message that Craig shared, is you don't have to be perfect. Don't wait to be perfect. I think that blesses all of us. I'm going to take that for myself. Don't wait to be perfect. Sometimes it's your imperfection and the fact that you're pushing through that helps other people. So thank you guys for hanging out with me on a Thursday night. I will actually be back tomorrow with a very special reality check with some ladies, some hot ladies with a new movie that's coming out. And of course, you guys know on Monday, we'll be back with more Ready to Love drama. So of course, I appreciate you hanging out. See you guys next week. See you guys tomorrow. This is Christal Jordan with Rolling Out, and I will see you all later. Bye-bye.